think we have the roll call sheet moving around. If everybody hasn't signed it, it might be over there. Pass back on. Thank you. Regarding the agenda, I'm going to do a motion on this, but we have a number of changes that we've been asked to amend to this. Let me have a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Do I have a second? Discussion. Commissioner Barlow.
I would like to add an item to the Finance Committee report, a 12.1, and that would be to discuss a resolution encouraging the state legislature to pass H 770.
So this is a motion to endorse a legislative act, am I correct?
Yes.
Okay. Do we have any discussion on this addition for 12.1 to be talked about it and motioned during the Finance Committee report? Okay. I also have two changes. Number one is there's a change for the wording of 13A of the executive session motion. Strike staff to discuss staff matters and replace that with personnel. Any discussion on that? None? Thank you. I also have a third item. As we remove ourselves from executive session, we do have to we will be calling a vote on one of those items in support of the vote will be a decision regarding the IT support staff contract. So that's be item 14 will be that item, and the adjournment number 14 will move to number 15. Okay, any questions on that?
We'll have to come back up here to vote.
We will have to come back up here to vote, that's correct. Okay. So, all those in favor of the amended agenda, please say aye. Aye. All those against? Thank you. Appreciate your patience as I went through those. Moving on to section 3, we welcome any comments from the public. If there's anyone in the public that would like to address us, please come forward and please come to the mic. Seeing none, I will close the comment period. Thank you. Are there any board reflections at all? Seeing none, thank you. Moving on to the board report, there's only one item, which is a statement regarding the audit summary. This is certainly only my view, so if there's going to be a moment of everybody can discuss this afterwards, and so we can talk about it. The last few years have been tough on the district, and particularly the students. The hard work and tenacious drive of this board, along with the senior leadership, has turned the financial woes and defeated budgets into a thing to remain in the past. It is this determination that took the $1.2 million deficit carried forward from 2013-2014 year and allows us now to celebrate over a $1 million surplus in June of 2015. The recent audit by R.H.R. Smith, available on the school budget website, challenges us to continue this pursuit this year. As an example, the audit advises us to create further budget controls to force operation within budgeted expenditures. It also asks us to review the stipend policy in practice, to secure bank accounts not on the district books, and also to build a strong oversight and approval of all student accounts. So that's my statement, if anybody else would like to add to that. Please.
I just want to recognize Nathan Lavery as really providing some incredible oversight and discipline, along with our former interim superintendent, Howard Smith, for pulling the district out of kind of a financial weakness into strength. So thank you for your diligence with that. And if Howard were here, I'd give him a hug.
Commissioner Stoll.
Yeah, and I'd just like to let everyone know that anyone who wants to read the full text of the audit, including the management letter, we do have it posted on the website under our budget page, and I'd invite anyone to do that who's interested.
Thank you. Anyone else? Commissioner.
Well, I also wanted to commend Commissioner Chena for his North Avenue News column, which it kind of laid out what were some of the particular steps that the district has taken in order to, make progress towards fiscal responsibility. And I was actually thinking it would be nice if something like that from the district appeared on our website somewhere, so that we could communicate more clearly to the public what is making the difference, because I quite agree with what everyone else has been saying about the tremendous work that has been going on by the senior staff and district leadership, and as well as the persistent efforts of our finance committee. I think it's been a great team effort.
Superintendent Obang, is that something that you could entertain, taking a look at his letter and seeing actually whether that could be published possibly in its entirety on the board website?
Actually, the content of that letter is published on our budget website, so there's a section called...
Thank you for not saying I'm an idiot.
And so we're continuously updating that area, so thank you for giving the opportunity to share that.
Well, thank you.
So people can go onto the budget website and see there's a column there that shows compliance work and some of the fiscal changes. And so we'll continue to update that and let people know some of the changes that we are making in our fiscal practices.
Thank you. Commissioner Dodson.
I just want to add to the commendation to commend actually the Finance Committee and its leader, Commissioner Stoll. I think it's irrefutable to say that a lot of what we've achieved to this point, the foundation was set in a vacuum when there was really no one but the Finance Committee of the board attending to these matters, and it wasn't pretty, and it was a lot of criticism, but they hung in there and really did some yeoman's work to set us up, and to set Nate up, and to set Superintendent Obang up, and to really do the work. So I really think it's important we thank them. And then just to reiterate what our chairman said around, we got a lot of work left to do, and I hope that the community and the public will be patient with us. I think Superintendent Obang's done a wonderful job of giving us the language of enhancements and buybacks in a context of belt tightening. There's going to need to be belt tightening forward, and I think it would be remiss if people are like, "Whew, we got that out of the way, now we can spend," because that's probably not exactly what we have. But it doesn't mean we can't make enhancement. It doesn't mean we can't make education better for the children. So stick with us.
Anyone else? Seeing none, we'll close that. Thank you. Moving on to item 5, the superintendent's report. For the 100-day plan report.
Check your name is inside, so pass it down. So what you're receiving is the hard copy of the 100-day plan report. There is an electronic copy for public and anyone else who's interested to view on the website. But I thought it'd be nice for you to have something in your physical hands in terms of the report and go through. But the real extended report is actually electronic, and I'll explain as we go through the process.
Is there any more? Can I get one? Thanks. Thanks. Oh, I got names already, thank you. No.
Missing one? Brian's right there. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so I'll get Nate to scroll up. So, you know, this has been a culmination of 3-4 months, and actually a little further than that. I guess it kind of started in the spring once I was appointed, in terms of some of the background and being able to establish, develop a plan that would be suitable for Burlington School District and to be able to move forward. And now I'm just going to highlight, I'm not going to read it in detail because you do have a hard copy and you can go online, but I want to just run through so you have an idea of where some of the information is and the process that was taken and where you can find some of the results. So the first page just talks a little bit about why an entry plan. You know, I've had that conversation with public and people as I've gone around, you know, why do you do an entry plan, how do you do it? So just talks a little bit about strategic directives in terms of the entry plan and some of the core areas that wanted to achieve. Okay. And then the explanation of what an entry plan is. So talk a little bit, the essence really is to give the superintendent analysis of the current district and to look at where alignment and gaps should happen in an expeditious way. So it's sort of a logical process in terms of gathering information and being able to connect with all the right people to get the type of information that's going to help in moving towards the next step. And, you know, and our next step is really bringing everyone together and developing that strategic plan, that multi-year plan, and saying, hey, these are some of the gaps, and this is where we need to go, and develop a plan that we're all sort of supportive of, and we can sort of plan as we move forward. I've inserted some quotes throughout. Some of the quotes come from people in society, and some come from some of our community members throughout the process in gathering information. Some of the things that people have said during the community forums or budget consultations, I've highlighted there. Next slide. And then this page just illustrates the objectives, and these are the categories that the actions and the indicators were identified in each of these categories. And these categories are the categories that really allows me or anyone to encompass the entire district in terms of all different aspects, from the nuts and bolts in the facilities to, you know, curriculum in the classroom in terms of what needs to happen in that space of time. Okay. This page just shows some of the appendices. There is a link when you go through. Well, there will be a link. I'm going to put it up as soon as I present it to you, where you can hear what people said. So many of the conversations that we've taken in the forums and things, we have the raw data, so unedited, so people can go on and read what individuals have said. You won't be able to identify individuals because we don't have names to them, but you can see the comments and the questions, and if you want to spend that time, look at that. And then we have a number of appendices that were developed throughout the process or we used in terms of enhancing our understanding or sort of collating information to take the next steps. Right? And you can probably see it better in your booklet than on this. So it's laid out in this format where the strategies on the left side goes with the strategic objectives, and then the actions that are taken, and then the recommendations on the right side, right? So I'm not going to go through the strategies, but I will just highlight some of the recommendations as we go through, just to highlight some of the areas that that you may recognize, or maybe you haven't recognized, that I wanted to kind of share with you. And these recommendations will come together in my work plan in terms of, looking at the system and saying, okay, we need to do this, we need to do that, we need to do that, move forward. There are both short and long-term recommendations. Obviously, turning a ship around does not happen overnight, so we have to be somewhat strategic in terms of what we can do immediately and what we're going to spread out in terms of doing a long-term. But at least we'll be able to have a work plan that goes alongside the plans we're developing as a system, and I can keep track in terms of throughout the conversations where we need to go and be able to have staff join in finding resolutions for here. Okay. So I guess before we go, the first two categories really talk about the the board itself, so work that we need to do, right, in terms of a board. And a couple of nuggets up there that illustrate some of the things we need to do. One of the things that I think we need to do as a board is do more celebration around the good work that we're doing, right? So we need to have a communication strategy around that. How do we get that out there? Because often people are only paying attention when there's something going wrong. But, you know, in my short time, I have had some really good communications from parents who are really happy and excited about what's happening for their children in our schools. And often you don't hear those voices. I think we need to resonate those voices a little bit more and share some of the good things that are happening in our district. So a strategic plan around communication needs to be developed and how we're going to do that and be able to share what the good things we're doing. Okay, Nate? So some more, you know, we talked about multi-year strategy, so that's an area. Administrative structures. So looking internally, one of the first things I have to do in terms of staff, I look at central staff and the coordination of our system leaders. And so I've identified definitely there are structures that need to be put in place for our senior staff and our school leaders. So we've started this process in what we call systems leaders, and we meet once a month, and it's the senior team, all the principals, and other senior administrators in the system, and we talk about initiatives and things that are happening, and they help make decisions. I think that's critically important because often centrally we might make decisions, and then it goes down to the school level, and they shake their head and they go, they don't have a clue what's happening. But if we've got our school leaders at the table, when we're making those decisions, they can say, well, did you think about this or about that? And they're the ones that are going to implement it. So they can say, oh, it'll work better. And we've seen some really good success already in terms of, I think they value the opportunity to have some voice in that decision-making process as we move forward. And also executive council, so that's a smaller group with the senior directors, but we've also added principal voices. I really value school leaders, and that's one of the things that I think the people who are on the ground day to day or leading our buildings, we get judged by our schools every single day. You know, when a child goes home, parent says, how was school today? That's the report card, right? And so the people who are in our buildings are the ones who are going to give our best communication. So at Exec Council, it's not just the senior directors, but we also have representation from school administrators to be there to talk about particular decisions we're making to see how it will roll out. This next one's about partnerships, and I think we've talked about that with some of the community forum updates. Partnerships with the universities and colleges and with some of our community agencies. And there's another piece which falls under communication is around the communication strategy we have with our PTOs. You know, through the analysis, they've recognized that we don't have a system approach to bring together our PTOs or communicate with them in any way that you know, be effective and make them feel that they're part of a bigger system and they can contribute in some fashion. One of the steps in the next few weeks, I will be having a meeting with PTO reps together. There's a couple of things I want to share with them and hopefully hear from them as well too. And I've had a chance to go to pretty much almost all the PTOs in small groups. But bringing them all together and having from, you know, across the city, actually having conversations about what's happening, I think will be beneficial to all of us. So here we get into some more curriculum pieces, and I won't go through all of this, but there's a couple of highlighted areas here. Data sets, how are we using data and how we measure. We definitely need a data center, say. One of the things I do in the structure that I'll develop is identify a department that's responsible for research and data so they can collect and validate the things that we're doing based on research that's out there, and we can have really good conversations around where we need to go next. And also we can maybe fashion the data in a way that we can use it externally. So we can share it with the board and we can share it with our community. You know, often when you have data, there's so much of it and you could talk for days in terms of trying to analyze it, but we need to find a way to be able to communicate what's happening in our district in the data form that our community can recognize where we're going, where we're coming from. And I'm talking both empirical and descriptive data, right? So you need the stories and the sound bites along with the numbers and metrics. Curriculum priorities, there are a number of curriculum areas that we need to have some philosophical discussions, both internally and externally, around what we feel are the key components for learning for our students. I think that's critical in terms of consolidating our vision of curriculum development and our student learning, so we can pool our resources and pool our training in that fashion. So that's a conversation that we have to have, and I put the example up there as around foreign language model, right? We don't really have a model, we just kind of do, and we have a lot of exposure courses. So we have to have the conversation, do we want exposure courses, or do we have fluency courses, or do we have some kind of hybrid combination, right? Does it start from grade 6 or grade 7, grade 8, or, you know, right now people just advocate for them, but I would hesitate to say when students graduate from them, what can they do? What's the outcome? And we need to put that in place and say, when you leave this course or leave these, you'll be able to do this, and then put the practices in place for that. Community engagement. And the other one I would say is my desire is really to work with the police department to develop a school board police protocol. I've heard from community members, I've heard from staff, heard from students around some of their dissatisfaction with some of the relationships and things that have happened in our schools and the relationship with police. And I've heard people who've said, you know what, they're really well-intentioned, and I've had conversations with the police chief and other departments, and I believe they're willing to work with us to talk about what the roles are and how they can work and be perceived and actually be supporting what we're doing and what they're doing in the community together. And so that will take some time to bring a group from superintendent's office as well as a group from the police chief's office and look at areas that we want to create some protocols that we can share with our schools so people know what to do when a situation happens and how do we handle it, and then we can call our police services in for support in doing that. So go back up, I'll read this one quote. So this was one that was kind of, we embrace every student and accommodate a great diversity of people and backgrounds. Shared this one because this was kind of a theme from a lot of parents and I'm not just going to say teachers, I'll say staff, because it was more than just teachers, who've had this kind of sentiment, right? That they felt that we were a place that embraced, you know, everyone that came in, and they were trying to work towards that. And sometimes it's not perceived that way because of things that happen, but I think the intentions are there. The challenge for us is sometimes the impact is not the same as our intentions, and that's some work we have to do as well. And yeah, this still goes with the community engagement. I sort of highlighted the InfoSnap piece there because that's us moving into sort of a technological age where we can have better communication with our parents in terms of what they have access to in our schools. At the same time, recognizing that not all of our parents have access to technology or even can operate it in the way that, you know, some of our staff can. So that's a piece that's going to increase our communication, but we have to still recognize that everyone's not going to have that accessibility or even be willing to use that tool, and they need to get the information in different ways. Right sizing. I don't want to miss this one because this is a big one. We do really, and we're doing that now through our budget process, but as I've said before, I would have been doing this regardless of the budget piece in terms of doing an analysis, in terms of trying to right size our district and getting to the right place so we can function effectively and use the dollars that we are going to be able to generate to enhance our programs and not play this game around staffing every year. Take this staff away, add this staff, add this day. We need to develop some good formers and get the right size. I'm not sure if we're at the right size yet. I know in some areas, I think we're getting there. So we'll be able to kind of review and say some areas, oh, you know what, they actually need resources. Some areas, okay, we need to shift those resources. And that's a process that happens in terms of going forward. But looking at our numbers, we really haven't taken that lens in terms of our numbers and where the numbers are, and look at how we right size our staffing. Right? So. Policies and procedures. Nate, I'm going to get you to click that link. So we've been doing a process, and we just had a policy audit session. And that's given us an opportunity to continue the coherence mapping session that has happened. That gives us a chance to look at a range. So just go back up a little bit, because I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but I'll show you the table of content so you can see. So we spent a couple of days with the facilitator with different groups from the district, ranging from teachers in the classroom to senior directors from all areas, and looking at some of our actions and some of our policies and how they impact the work that we're doing, and doing an audit through that. So scroll down there, Nate, you can see if I can show you one of the tables, just to show you the types of data that's been gathered that's helped us to move forward. Out of this process, we have, I think there's 4 or 5 different groups that have identified areas, and those groups are working to make change in our system that's going to help us in terms of things that we have to keep going, Nate. Section. The actual full extent of this report is 309 pages. So this is just, this confidential in some parts, but I put it up anyways because it's my document, so I'm sharing it. See if I can get to a good page. Keep going, just keep going. There's a couple of tables that kind of will tell a story without having to go through the whole document. But you can see how it's broken down in terms of, we looked at things from school level to central level, and even programming pieces around proficiency-based graduation requirements, and what are we doing, how are we doing, what are the percentages. Many of the programs that we have going on, we're doing an evaluation analysis of those programs. Why are we doing it? Is it effective? Do we need to stop doing it? And I think there's mixed responses for all of them. There are initiatives that we started and people are saying, wow, this is looking great. The initiatives that we've been doing that we're not getting any bang for this because people don't really know about it. It's not having any traction, and there's no evidence that it's supporting student achievement or student success in any way. So this kind of analysis, when you bring everyone in the room and we do that deep analysis and they go back and do the work, it's really helpful in talking about the next steps. Okay, you can come out of there, Nate. So if you're interested in reading more, you can go this. I think I posted maybe about 150 pages. If you want to read all 309, let me know. Then we'll share that with you as well. But okay, yeah, don't pass this one. So here's the, this strategy was around looking at our fiscal department, our budget piece, and you'll see a number of nuggets. There are other areas too, but this is sort of summarized big categories that we have work to do. One of the big pieces, kind of a big umbrella task, is number 1 there is develop an internal budget process that includes staffing formulas. We don't currently have formulas for custodial, for ELL, for a lot of the areas that you would look at teacher ratio or enrollment numbers. We've kind of always done okay, get a couple staff here, I need more, okay, here, I don't need, and without any sort of analysis in terms of what works and what doesn't work. We've got some of our staff already starting to look at formulas in their subject areas around special ed, around ELL, and will be coming forward to staff in terms of proposing, a formula that would work for us as a system that we could use it. So the way a formula would work is you apply the formula and then you do the equity analysis in terms of, okay, are there any gaps? Okay, the formula goes are all for all, but we know in this area there is a socioeconomic need there, so that we add an extra, whatever, or there's a special need here and we do that. But right now we just kind of just add because we think we need to add, and sometimes we get it right, and sometimes it may not be exactly right? So, and as you know, once the staff are at it, people get connected to the people, right? And to shift them around, it makes it really challenging because they're connected to the people, not really the program. Okay? So there's a number of things there, and then Nate could talk to this if he wanted to, because there are so many areas that we're excited about having the opportunity to look at, because we can only see things improving. There are changes that need to happen, and kudos to the board for the last 2 years in sort of staying the course in terms of doing the heavy lifting that has to happen. We're not done in terms of the cleansing, but I do believe that the direction we're taking and the budget that we have this year sets us up in the right direction to start having conversations around the enhancements we want to put into our district, and how do we put that in there, right? And all these checks and balances are going to even bear more fruit, because we're going to be able to find more efficiencies and gather more dollars before we even have to do the budget analysis piece. Say this one, then we'll run to the end there. The recommendation there around establishing a safe, equitable, inclusive department that supports school environment, pro-discipline practices, and alternative to suspension programs. I feel there's a need for us to bring all those pieces together under one umbrella, so we can manage it and people know where they should go for supports, and we can measure it, and we can have not just reactive or punitive measures, but also be driving the preventative work, right? Because if we do the foundation, we're not going to have as much challenges. And right now, we've got people all over doing different things, but it needs to kind of get coordinated and have one center that can address some of those pieces, right? Okay. And then finally, the last page, I think one of the most important pages is the thank you to the community and students, parents for their support throughout the process, and then to the board in terms of your support to me in going through this process. I wouldn't be able to execute some of the actions that were going forward if I didn't have the support from the board saying, yeah, this is what needs to happen. It makes a big difference. You talk to any superintendent, when they'll tell you when the support from the board is in line, then you can actually make good decisions based on what needs to happen in our schools, not based on other variables. Right? So there it is. I skipped over some of the links. I know we have a long night, but if you go back to the appendices page, all those links will be there, and you'll be able to click in and look at all the data and look at all the comments and things like that. Interesting. There's one of the links has, I think it's a survey I did with staff maybe, and it's reported in Wordle format, because I asked for words, so you'll be able to see the words that came out the highest. And I thought that was pretty good graphical representation, just to kind of just see what people have said. So there you go, 100 days plus. Done.
Thank you. Good news.
Good news. Okay, Nate, can you, just click on that. Okay, click on the first, click here. Mark, are we going to do like... There's a document there with a number of good news items, but I did want to share with, at the next board meeting, you will get a copy of our annual report, but I wanted to share it with you electronically so you had an idea, and then you'll get the copy, but there it is. So if you scroll down, I'll just give the headings, usual format. There's a funny looking guy in the front, so that's good.
Notice you have your picture up there.
Student and staff highlights. Student and staff highlights. Right, so some work around what's happening in our schools, assessments, teacher quality, move on. And then there's a good section in here around the budget process and information. A lot of the information that people have been asking around the budget, which is posted on our site, but it's in the report as well too, so they can see what's put up there. And there's some year-to-year comparisons. Did we pass that graph? Oh, and this graph here, I think it's a little bit more detailed than it has been in the past. So I know Nate was able to include more categories. Oh, there it is. Okay, expanded. More categories in terms, and I think that one of the commissioners asked for an expanded version at one of the meetings, and it's reflected in the public document in terms of all the expenditures that we have, inclusive of the education spending and all. And so there are documents there that people can go and preview. So I just wanted to share that with you electronically before you got the actual hard copy information next month. And that's it. So please go on if you're interested in more good news. There's a document there with all kinds of things that are happening in our schools. And as I said, we have to create a strategy where we can share those in a better way so people can actually recognize them. Because we have pages of them every month, but we don't really do much with it, right? So we have to figure out something.
Commissioner Dodson.
Yeah. Thanks, Superintendent O'Bain. That was super helpful. My question is, there are several things you mentioned. First of all, I don't know if you would agree, this process seems similar to an audit. You were doing like an audit. And so like the audit that we had done by our external accounting firm, I'm wondering if it's an internal piece or if there's an externally communicated piece around clarity as to opportunities for growth. In here, it feels kind of implicit, so I feel like part of our challenge as a district is I don't feel like we had really honest talk about ourselves about what we need to improve on.
Right.
I feel like there was this really kind of soft sense of things, but we got some hard stuff that we need growth on. You use the term turn the ship around. In here, it says dressing an organization in new clothing, confidence to allow a variety of people inside and out. I don't feel like we've done that well in the past. So I'm wondering what is part of this is your firm message to this district, internal and external. We got work to do. We're doing some things well, but at some level, this is a turnaround because people don't think it's a turnaround.
Well,
is it a turnaround?
Yes, it is. Well, as I said, I'm really excited for the strategic planning process because I see our strategic plan is a strategic plan for change and improvement. So that's the message we're going to be saying. And I'm going to say, what I'm going to hopefully communicate is that, yeah, you know what, there's some good things happening. We're doing well, but we can do much better, right? And then if we pay attention to these areas and we focus our energies on the real priorities, Burlington can be, you know, one of the best in the state, if not in the nation, easily. And I'm not just saying that because I've just I had an email from a parent that was here in Burlington, moved away, came back, and said, this is the best district, right? So they went to the new district, because, you know, when you hear, you always hurt the ones you love, right? You know, we criticize, and that's because we all want to do better, right? And you think, oh, okay, well, and then they go away, and you experience a different district in a different state, and then you come back, you go, oh, it wasn't so bad. How do I help to make this even better? Because people can see that, you know, the soil is here, right? So I think we can have a really good campaign in the spring around the strategic planning and sort of sending the message that, you know, hey, we're in a good spot. We could be even better. And most of the things that people have talked about, even through the budget process, in terms of things that they want and, you know, they think they should, hope to shed some light down the road in terms of why do you want that and how do you want it? People think they want this, but maybe, yeah, you do want that, but we need to do that thing a little bit different so we can, you know, get to where we want to go. But you're right, we are turning the ship around. It is a big ship. It takes time, right? But we're looking for milestones as we move forward. And I think some of the things we've been able to achieve this year, that we're heading in the right direction.
Thank you.
Further questions or comments?
I'll just make a comment. So I want to thank you also for this. It's a very thoughtful analysis, and although it's general, I realize the presentation is general. I can see the thought beneath it, and it's really good to have had you look at so many different aspects of the district. And, I just want to make a comment that first of all, I also look forward to the strategic planning. And I share with Commissioner Dodson the concern that we balance praising what we do well with an honest assessment of where we have to go. And I was very happy, many of you may not be surprised, at your commitment to improving data. Numbers are great for telling us how well we're doing, and what we have lacked in the district for a long period of time has been that there have been spending increases, but no way to show the community that their money is well spent, that is, that kids are doing better. And so such a fundamental piece of the work that you have to do, it seems to me, is also to be able to make the case to the community that we are improving student outcomes. And I know that that'll be part of your strategic planning process, and want to just give some priority to, or emphasis to the data piece so that we can kind of join you in making that case.
Right. Excellent. And I would say, when you look through the recommendations, there are a couple of areas that talks about communication strategy, and that's all part of it. You know, how do we communicate to our community our successes and our challenges, because we need them to support us in our challenges in order to continue to move forward. So that makes some rationale around decisions that we make. People get it, oh, okay, that's why we're doing it, because we said we're trying to get to this goal, and this is why we're doing that to get there, as opposed to why are they doing that, or, you know, that kind of thing. So,
yeah, thank you for this thorough, comprehensive analysis. As a companion to what Stephanie said, I really appreciate the systemic approach and the thinking that you're taking to, when you mentioned the formulas, like bringing some kind of consistent expectation and standard to the district so that people know what to expect, and so that we aren't, you know, in kind of that same pattern that we were in of just kind of going up and down and here and there and new things coming and then not being tended or stewarded, and just really having that consistency come with so that people know what to expect and what they're going to get, you know, over more than a 1 to 2 year basis. So I think that'll be a new experience for the district, and looking forward to that.
Commissioner Stoll?
Just 2 quick questions. First, how is this going to be shared, or has it already been shared with staff?
Yeah, I've done just 1 or 2 presentations with staff, but we'll be sharing out with staff. And then after we've had this conversation, then I'll post it publicly. And any opportunity I have with the staff forum, I'm going to talk about it in terms of, you know, some of the highlighted pieces, and then sort of pitch that everyone should come when we're doing the strategic plan, so they can add voice to some of the areas that I've identified that we need to think about, and maybe add some strategies on how we can get there.
I guess I'd just also add, it would be great to share it with students too. I don't know if you're planning to do that, but certainly I've heard from students that they'd like to have more voice, and this would be a great conversation starter. Right. And the last question I have is, this is very general, and I understand this is not exactly the forum to dig deep and ask you particular questions, but since you've spent time doing this, if we have questions about particular areas, for example, I'm interested in what you discovered about special education and how it's integrated, and where you'd like to see that particular area of our curriculum go. Where's the opportunity for us to do that, or when will that be?
I know there's so many areas, and there's so much to, I think you will see as we move forward an opportunity to look at certain areas. So I'll give you an example. So once we've completed this phase and we're starting it, I would hope to start bringing some program presentations in certain areas that we've identified, and say, this is the analysis, and, you know, this is where we're going in terms of, like, for instance, one of the areas that I hope to, in a short period of time, do analysis around the magnet schools. So I've done some analysis, and people might be surprised with some of the analysis around that. So I want to kind of bring it forward, say, hey, look, this is what we found, and this is where we think we're going. And those opportunities, there definitely will be an opportunity around special ed. So we'll bring that forward. But there's so many areas that I think we'll just try to do it as we move forward. And when we get to the strategic planning phase and we get down to some of the staff level pieces, I think there'll be some robust conversations around, you know, what we're doing. And last month I went to the special educators meeting, and just to have a conversation with them and ask them, and they're all nodding their heads that we could do better, right? Like, they're all good people and they're doing great work. They're saying, yeah, we just need an opportunity to do better. And I shared with them my experience in terms of advocacy from community for special ed, and they said, well, we know the parents, and so I'm confident that when we have that conversation with them, that they're going to be able to highlight some of the key strategies that might change for us that'll make us even better.
Thank you. Anyone else? Thank you, Superintendent Obey. Moving on to the next item, item 6. Can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Commissioner Harrington, can I have a second? Mr. Kurt, all those in favor, please say aye.
I wanted to take some minutes off. How do I do that?
You want to do what, please? I'm sorry.
There were some minutes that I didn't want to pass. I wanted to comment on some minutes.
Oh, sorry. Yep, no. So discussion.
I just wanted to mention the Finance Committee minutes. We're missing an important comment from our auditor. I believe I was taking notes at that meeting, and I believe he mentioned that there were, in relation to the spending freeze and the student accounts, there were still some expenditures on general education from the student accounts. I'm not sure I have that exactly right, but I believe that's what he said, and that did not appear in the minutes, so I wanted to get that in the minutes.
Do you want to pull the minutes, have them amended, presented to Commissioner Stoll for acceptance, and bring them forth in March?
Sure.
Is that okay with you?
Sure. I recall, though, that Susan Marie was taking the official minutes for that meeting, not Commissioner Curry, but if you would like
I wasn't taking official minutes, but I was taking notes, and I wrote that comment down.
Okay.
So I wanted to,
So you want to go ahead and pull the finance meeting minutes?
yes,
For
to ask to
further,
have them amended. Yeah.
okay, so that's fine. Anything else, any other discussion on the consent agenda? Okay. All those in favor of the amended consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
All those against? Passes unanimously. Thank you. The next item is item 7, and this is meant to, actually, I'll facilitate this. This was meant for a moment for all of us to discuss on how we wanted to communicate the budget that we recently passed, and identification of key points, how you all felt about how you wanted things to be communicated. We only have a few weeks now. It's a good time to start on this. So I'd like to, anybody would like to start a discussion on that? I'd be more than open to any ideas. Commissioner Stoll.
At the finance meeting, we did speak about this to some extent, and Superintendent Obang agreed that he would bring forth some materials for us to use. So I do believe that's still probably in the cards. So that's a good start.
Okay. Commissioner Cheney, did you have your hand up? Okay. So the other thing is, do you want to do this individually for each one of your own wards and your own front porch forums, or do you want something to come from the entire board to start this conversation? Commissioner Cheney.
I would appreciate it if we could be given either a basic explanation or something to work with, so everybody's not writing something from scratch. Like, I'm really busy, so it would be helpful if there could be something I'm given to work with versus, I mean, I guess I just wrote an article for the North Ave News, so I have something
I think you're all set, Brian.
But still, I think, in terms of consistency, it would be nice if people were given some talking points or some outline of key things to make sure we all communicate.
Commissioner Judson.
I think I'm missing something, because I thought last night we read a 2-page presentation draft of how we were going to communicate.
No.
No. That was going to be a press release.
That was something else.
Okay, so what you're talking about is?
Budget.
Okay, got it.
Commissioner Sabino.
I want to ask Jake if you think it would be useful for us to help you in some way share the budget and explain the budget to students.
Yeah, I think that would be very important, just to increase communication as budget season approaches. Another thing, I'm not sure if any of you have been approached, but our school newspaper is running a full issue on issues including the budget. So I think if any of you would like to have anything written in there, so that would be important. But I think just increasing communication with students, possibly through me, but would be very important.
So just to follow up on that, so are there venues that one possibility is that you could invite a school commissioner to meet with you with students, depending on what venues are possible. The other is that some of this summary material describing the budget we could send to you and so forth. Any of that sound helpful?
Yeah, I think easy to read summary of the budget and explanation of what's going to happen if it gets passed would be very useful to make this information accessible to all students.
Yeah.
In relation to that, Stephanie, I think what I'm hearing from people that they want to understand is what was cut such that made the budget so difficult to create. In other words, the pilot money left, there's less federal money, there's a list of the things that have been cut without our, we have had no control over it would be helpful.
So it just seems to me that we have, the avenues that we typically have are the NPA meetings and Front Porch Forum. There's a possibility of writing an op-ed for the Burlington Free Press that would explain some of the budget. I always struggle with the fact that there's communities in the city that we don't reach by using those fora, and I'm not sure of other possibilities for reaching folks. But I think it's always worth us struggling to try to reach further into the community than simply those fora.
Anyone else?
Sort of a question, comment, just so that we're in discussion. Per Ann's comment, I'm sort of clarifying. I'm not sure, it doesn't feel to me like it's the most helpful to communicate the challenges and where we are in terms of cuts or what went away. Because it's so much bigger than that. Because I think that could lead someone to say, well, next year when we don't have those cuts, we'll have all this money to do things. I don't know that's the case. The cuts were there, but there's more macro things in play that are putting us in a situation where we need to be very thoughtful and not belt tightening, that's not the word I'm saying, but things are going to be austere next year and the next year. We're not going to be able to easily, well, next year we could do 10% because we tightened up a little bit the year before, right? So, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this year's, fiscal tightness is purely because cuts were made. It didn't appear, in the conversations I've been in, that's not how I've been understanding it. That there's a lot more at play than that, right? There's the state adjustment and the cap and the cost of the contract, right? And health care. There's a lot of things that seem bigger issues than the money that went away. But I don't know if I have that right.
Commissioner Curry, I'm sorry. Commissioner Harrington.
One of my constituents forwarded to me the Rutland City School District's webpage as an example of excellent budget communication, and their budget FAQs have a very nice, very plain explanation of what makes up the budget, what's new about this year's budget, how can you tell whether the budget is too high or too low, how is the school budget different from the municipal budget and taxes. I mean, I thought it's a very nice model of very plain questions that get at the central thing that people want to know about, and that sense of what's new. in the budget, it might get at a little bit of what Commissioner Judson was trying to suggest in terms of communicating about what's in the budget, but in a kind of positive way. So I think whether it's something we develop or something that the district staff develops, it really is a very nice model of plain communication.
Yeah, and this is certainly just my view. You can go back on some old budget presentations and flyers, and they certainly put a very positive feeling on some things that would just, you know, there'd be one line in there saying, by the way, we're carrying $2 million deficit forward, but we have all these wonderful things. So, and we're not a board like that. We've never been like that. We've always had no problem saying where the tough decisions have had to be made. So I agree with you that we could certainly get better at our presentation on the web. But I also want to make sure that it doesn't really, let's not make this out to be anything that it's not. This is just really a tough time for...
Which is what's nice about that. I mean, actually.
This is a tough time for all of us.
Yep.
Did you say Rutland or Rutland Southeast?
Rutland City Schools.
Cities, yeah.
Look at their budget FAQ.
Sorry, go ahead.
Commissioner Stoll.
So traditionally, there's a parent group that has come out with some good materials around the budget each year. I haven't heard if they're planning to do it this year or not. But perhaps someone from the board wants to kind of be a, reach out to them and see if that's going to happen. That's one suggestion. The other suggestion is it feels like if the administration could come up with sort of a press release maybe, not exactly a press release, but a flyer of some sort. That also has been done in the past, and then perhaps some Q&As that we could each use and personalize. I personally would rather see us communicate individually with at our Front Porch Forum, so it has our own voice, because we are the people who our constituents know, as opposed to one blanket letter, although certainly one blanket letter followed by individual types of communications could also be powerful. So I would request perhaps that those things
Mr.
happen.
Curry? Oh, Mr. Curry.
So I think Kyle has a very good point that, you know, my sense, or my personal opinion, is that it's the board's role to explain the context for the budget to the community. And the context is that we're restructuring, and the context is that we have legislative overlay that our budget is not our budget, it's a state-funded budget because of the way our educational tax system works. And that, in fact, it's not the board's role to be really in the weeds with the budget and explain line items and the kinds of things that are on the ballot. You know, that's really the superintendent's job to, you know, address the community's questions about the specific, you know, budget costs and revenues. And that, you know, our role is really up here. Here's the context. Here's where we're going. Here's why, you know, some of the things to consider, why we ended up with a budget like this year, but not to attempt to explain line items to the community. That seems to me the superintendent's role.
Commissioner Judson.
So I'm still hoping for a cheat sheet that we would all, we need to be on the same page. And if someone in my district is going to ask the question, how did you come up with X? I think we have to have some standard questions that we would expect to be asked, and then have agreed upon answers to them. And I don't know who does that. I'd like to offer to do it, but I'm not the one to do it.
Superintendent Obeng.
So I think we've had this conversation, and so we've been doing some work, and I think I committed to helping the board with that communication. So what I was going to propose was to be able to send a message out with a bit of a summary, right? And then I identified there were two big pieces that I wanted to kind of highlight. One was around the data, and one was around implementation. I think people have had that, what are we doing about implementation? But we also gathered all the questions in terms of that's out there. And even in our presentation, everything you said has been in there, but we could package it a little better. And we're looking at a strategy of where we can send a message out to the community and we can post, everything will be on our website in terms of individual type questions. So all the questions like what happens if the budget fails, all those questions are there. That would give you an opportunity to review those responses and then be able to speak to those in public or on forums or.
So that'll be on the website, you said?
It'll be on our website, so we can put a package there and we can go through all the types of questions. So then it ranges, because, you know, going question by question, trying to do one communication around that, that's not going to be efficient. The other thing I would say is, you know, I'm hearing people talking about what we've always done. One of the things that I've slowly tried to do throughout this process is change the behavior of our community in terms of what they've been used to, right? Because it is a different process, and we're going to even change even more. So I don't want people to expect exactly what they've had. I want to provide them something different so they can say, oh, okay, this is how it's going, and be able to give them the information that they need, but maybe in a different way so they can have a different expectation in terms of how we move forward. I also feel that we're in a stage where we're really looking forward. That's why I think if we have the questions and all the answers, and have gathered questions from all of you in community, and we're going to be able to have all those answers on that we talk about, yeah, if you want these answers, here it is, and you'll know what the answers are so you can speak to it and add to it. But also looking at the opportunities for community in terms of our next step around our strategic planning, where they can add some voice. That's when they get to have some voice into what the values are. The technical pieces around the budget, I think that's stuff that Nate already has in hand. We can put those pieces up. There's lots of literature across the state of people who've written things around explanation around the act and budget processes. We can package those things up and put it up there so you can refer constituents to them or read them themselves and respond to it. But giving people the feeling that, okay, we've gotten to a place that now we're ready to kind of move to the next step. I think we're at the stage where we don't want to go back too far, talking about too much about different line items and things, because we're moving forward, and we have to do that. We have to make that shift ourselves mentally in order to have the community understand that, okay, we've had to make some tough decisions, and now we're going forward, and you'll have opportunities to do this, A, B, and C as we move forward. So I was going to propose to have, because I wanted to send a communication to parents myself to conclude this budget process, to say, thank you very much. These are things that we've done. Now we're moving, okay? Now we're going to the next stage. If you want responses on these type of questions, go to our site. They're all there. Look at them. If you need some follow-up, then you can contact, you know, the appropriate person. It could be me or our business office for any level of detail. But we need people to sort of say, okay, we're going forward. I think we've had really good support in the community. People are asking questions because they want to know. But for the most part, I think people have been supportive of our process and where we are in terms of being able to continue to move. So I don't want us to fall into the reactive mode of stepping too far back, right, when we've come so far, and we want to keep the momentum moving forward. So just something to think about just in terms of your thinking when you're communicating with community members around what we're doing and where we want to go. So the summary, I think, would be helpful for everyone, so you can have that summary, and then the questions and answers from all the types of questions, you can read them, and then you can decide how you want to use them.
NPA meetings are coming up. When do you think we might be able to get that list?
I think we can have something completed for end of this week, so you can be ready to go.
And then I totally understand what you're saying about not being reactive. However, I have trouble with saying to people, or the idea of saying to people, you know, we're moving forward and you're going to be able to do ABC. It's too vague. I can imagine saying, you know, we're looking at every part of where our money's going. We want to have data that indicates that we're spending the money in places that it makes a difference. And you all can have a voice in that through the strategic planning. But I think what I'm hearing from people is sometimes our communication is too vague. And they're feeling like just kind of put off. So if you had any words that, if your focus is to encourage people to be looking forward, if you could have specific things of what they could be looking forward to. August 1st, we're going to be starting our community groups on getting feedback for the strategic plan, you know, specific things like that.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that, you know, the detail is in the responses. Like, I've heard all the questions. I think the details are there, so people can go and read the details, right? And I would hesitate to say that it wouldn't be a question that we haven't heard already, that we haven't heard, that we're going to be able to put up and say, you know, you want to know about the, you know, what Hunt's going to look like in terms of the impact of the budget, right? We're gonna put that up. So one of the things on the site is we're gonna have implementation, budget implementation, because I think those are the things I've heard that people want to know what's the next step. So if we have a budget implementation section that has every school, and we're gonna update, so we're working with our administrators right now, and we're gonna update that and say, okay, at Hunt, you know, we had 348 students last year. This year we had 350 students. All programs are staying stable. There's no need to add or subtract any staff. Implementation completed.
Perfect. Right.
Next school, right? So there's the detail, right? It's there. So I'm speaking in generality, but the responses will be more detailed at that level, so people can have an idea. Because I know people want to know the impact on their own child and in their schools. That's the end of the day. That's the question people want to hear. So I think we can provide that. I don't think we can provide a response for everyone in one communication.
No, I understand.
But if we have that kind of strategy, you can have a general, and if you want detail, you can go and look at, you know, your school, and then you can also contact your principal because they'll have the latest.
Sure.
And what that's also going to do is, because we're having conversations with our administrators around the inflation, we'll be able to be consistent in sharing information to the community, so everyone's hearing it. Because I know what happens when there's a vacuum. You start hearing rumors about this here, and this here, and that here, and then people don't know what's the accurate. So I think this might be a good strategy in terms of saying the communication is on the site, and our schools are going to take that communication and then put it in their newsletters and communicate with their parents, and then add details at the school level where it should be in terms of talking with their teachers and their...
Yeah, we have one more question by Commissioner Curry.
I just wanted to close the loop with Commissioner Seguino's question to Commissioner Bucci, and I would be happy to sit down with you and explain to you what I know about the budget, and then if you have more questions, you know, I think we would want to get those answered so that, you know, the students have the information they want or need. So I'm happy to do that with you this weekend, and then, you know, if Superintendent O'Ben could be available for Commissioner Bucci for additional questions, we could set up a way for you to get. Do you have a deadline for the paper?
I'll email you.
Okay.
Thank you. Moving on, we're going to go on to the committee reports. Commissioner Dotson.
Thank you. So we met this evening, and we had a really interesting, I think, and helpful presentation from Victor Prusak and Bonnie Johnson-Ayton, and they were talking to us about Digital Promise Grant and the one-to-one technology initiative. And really, at the end of the day, the questions we had as a committee were more of a systemic and all-encompassing nature, meaning how does this grant fit in with an overall vision that the district has, and then to drill down from there, that we have at the middle schools, and why does the expenditure, from our perspective as a board, the investment, what is it that this investment does? And she did a nice job of giving us a presentation that had some video and some explanation that kind of showed the richness of things that students and teachers are able to do in terms of collaboration, in terms of design, in terms of equity of access that this grant provides. I would say I think there's still work to be done on the evaluation assessment part, but I understand we have significant money, that there's a pretty rigorous evaluation that's happening now on this initiative. So net, I think it was a good example of the kind of demonstration that we want as a committee, with folks coming in, our professionals, particularly those close to instruction, come in and talk to us about what's happening at the classroom level. So that was what happened at our lease meeting.
Thank you. Any questions for Commissioner Dotson? Moving on, Commissioner Seguino.
We had a couple of great a great presentation from Nikki Fuller, Director of HR, regarding hiring practices and efforts to improve diversity in hiring. It was very well thought out. I thought it had a very kind of systemic approach to it, and really thought about how to focus resources to achieve those goals of diversifying the workforce. And one of the conclusions was that there has been more progress in other areas, but where there really needs to be more progress is focusing on teacher hiring. So that was very helpful. The other thing that we did was had a very good discussion with the superintendent about data around discipline and suspensions, what kind of data would be useful to us, what the district would need, how they would use it, and so forth. And the superintendent shared with us discipline data that continue to show wide disparities by various groups. Free and reduced lunch, race, and certainly gender is certainly in there. So we had a good discussion on what we would need to do our oversight role as a board, as well as the district. And the superintendent's report tonight that discusses improvements in data collection and kind of a systemic approach to data, I think will help us there. I did want to just mention, I shared this with some of the members of the committee in advance. We had I read an economic paper that was written recently, and it looked at the relationship between the race and ethnicity of the teacher and discipline of students. And what was found in this study was that the perception of student misbehavior was much lower if black students had black teachers. And I think there are a lot of reasons for that, but I think it speaks to the importance of having a more diverse workforce. The report that was done a few months ago, last year, by the Vermont Legal Aid, called Kicked Out, which talks about discipline disparities in Vermont, I think really speaks to the importance of us as a committee continuing to address this issue, because it means a lot of time out of the classroom for students, and it drives a lot of what we see as the achievement gap. The Vermont legislature is actually considering legislation this year. There was a report by the Agency of Education on discipline issues and discipline data and suspension, and the Vermont legislature is considering some movement on that issue in terms of data collection. So I think it's an issue that we have focused on for the last couple of years, but it really is an issue that is really predominating across the country. It's not just here that we're thinking about it, and there has been a lot of movement towards ending out-of-school suspension, which we have articulated a desire to do here. And of course, that's why we started on restorative justice. So in any case, I really appreciate the superintendent's work on that. And I think it was a really, really constructive meeting.
Thank you. Commissioner Dotson.
Yeah, just a quick question. Thank you, Commissioner Seguino. It strikes me that if we are successful, which we need to be in being better at recruiting a diverse teacher force, if we double the number we have now, we'll still be above 90% white. If we triple it, we'll be in the 80. You know, that's our story. Where are we at in PD? What have you heard about professional development? We've had changes in the diversity office, I think. How are we going to help that bulk of our teachers, which will continue to be the bulk of our teachers, serve students who don't look like them, may not have grown up like them, don't behave like them, you know, et cetera?
Maybe I can defer to the superintendent on that.
Absolutely. I mean, we haven't laid out a plan, but you saw in the budget presentation that we have identified an equity coach, right? So in my analysis, I think we need to get closer to a classroom level in terms of building capacity for all our teachers. Because if we go with the strategy, we have to get just people who live in one of the isms to be able to communicate that. We're never going to get there. So we have to build capacity with all our staff. So that's a strategy we'll start right away because it's in our budget, and we'll be able to move forward with that.
Great.
Thank you. Commissioner Curry.
Thank you. tonight, it's exciting that you're seeing the culmination of the policy committee's work, particularly Commissioner Harrington on the, and Commissioner Judson on the evaluation. So that will take place in executive session. But I also want to thank Commissioner Barlow, who is pulling together a group of folks to attend the Winooski School Board meeting in order to observe policy governance in action. So I believe Commissioner Barlow has corresponded with Michael DeCaro from Winooski. Is he the chair of the Winooski School Board?
Yes. Tomorrow, 5 of us have signed up, but others are welcome to come still. We have Commissioners Judson, Kirk, Stoll, and Harrington, and myself going to attend the Winooski School Board meeting tomorrow. We're meeting at 6 there, and we'll get a short orientation, and then their meeting starts at 6:30. So
Great.
it's exciting.
So will you send the agenda materials out to the full board, please?
Yes,
Okay.
I've sent it out to the people that are attending, but I'll send it out to everybody.
Great. So the question came up for the policy committee, why do we want to move to policy governance? And so we are undertaking a kind of process of answering that question. And to that end, people have the opportunity to observe in action, and then I believe Michael DeCaro will speak with everybody about some of the pros and cons. And also we have Val Gardner, who's the Vermont School Board Association's trainer in policy governance, coming to the policy committee meeting on February
23rd?
23rd, no, 21st, I don't know. 23rd. You're right, 23rd. To answer that question as well. So I'd like to invite any commissioners that are wondering why we would want to move to policy governance to come to that meeting to hear Val and have a discussion with her.
Thank you. Commissioner Kirk.
ITC, yay. Thanks for waking me up. ITC's been very lackluster. We are in the process of going through the evaluation of the buildings and facilities. We haven't had time as a committee to go over those. So at our next meeting on the 16th, we are going to go over the recommendations of a joint, and the joint meetings between the city and the school board, and we'd like to invite anybody, especially the finance committee, to be part of this discussion, because this is going to be a huge discussion that's going to cost the district money and the city money and the taxpayers' money, and how best to evaluate the buildings and services and cohabitate through the one donor, the taxpayer, and make the city and the district work together. So that's really where we're at right now on that front. I have no news on top of horizons, no permanent home yet. Sorry. Maybe on the 16th.
Any questions for Commissioner Kirk? Thank you, Commissioner Stoll.
Sure.
16.
Most everything we've covered in finance, we've already talked about tonight, so don't have much to add. I would just say that in the 100-day report and also in the minutes from the Finance Committee, you'll note that the Finance Committee will be getting a report on a follow-up to the audit, so we'll be getting the administration's approach to how they're going to be systematically attacking all the various things that were identified that we have to work on, so we're looking forward to that. Again, I would just suggest anyone who has questions to look on the budget page. There's a lot of good information on the budget page, including things we've gone over at Finance Committee and talked about otherwise. So if you have questions, that's the first good place to look for information on the budget. That's all for the Finance Committee. We have one more thing that was just added to the agenda that Commissioner Barlow is going to bring up. I would like to preface before he starts by saying this did not come through the Finance Committee, but due to timeliness of it and other issues, it's coming straight here to the committee, or to the full board. Take it away.
Thank you.
Commissioner Barlow, if you'd go ahead and read the resolution itself.
Okay. I also had forwarded to Superintendent Obeng. I didn't know if Finance Director Library could put it up on the big screen.
Forward or share it?
I shared it as a Google Doc. So do you want to want me to give a little bit of background first, or just go right to reading the resolution? I can be.
If you can do it like in 1 minute, because we're really pressed for time, so we just need to.
Okay, so as you all know, we met with our legislative delegation in December, and we talked about ways they could help us in Montpelier during this legislative session. And on the short list of things that we had conveyed to them was a desire to see if there was a way legislatively that we could get access to the payment in lieu of taxes money that we've historically gotten from the city. And out of that discussion came a request for bill from Representative Wright, who sits on the House Education Committee, and it's House Bill 770. And it's a very specific bill that tweaks in a small way some language in the statute that's at the center of our inability to access those funds. And that statute's Title 16, Section 4029. And so H770 addresses that and makes language changes to allow municipalities to share non-tax municipal revenue with school districts. And so this would be extremely helpful to us. And now I'll read the resolution. Whereas our Burlington City Charter in Section 3-66 states that the Burlington City Council shall annually appropriate for the use of schools 1/2 of the cash payments to be received by the city in lieu of taxes from electric, light, and water resources departments and from other sources. And whereas the Burlington City Council acted in accordance with the City Charter, Section 3-66, and appropriated payments in lieu of taxes, parenthetically pilot, to the Burlington School District annually until fiscal year 2016, when the Vermont Agency of Education disallowed the practice because 16 VSA Section 4029B states that funds received by a municipality other than a school district may not be used directly or indirectly for education expenses. And whereas the Burlington School District has been significantly impacted by the loss of pilot revenue in combination with other external fiscal factors, and has required the district to make difficult spending reductions, resulting in cuts to programs and personnel. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Burlington School Board of Commissioners encourages the state legislature to pass H770, an act relating to municipal funding for education expenses, a bill that makes sensible amendments to 16 VSA Section 4029, thereby restoring Burlington's ability to provide pilot payments to the Burlington School District as our city charter intends. So I'm open for discussion.
Actually, let me go to a motion first.
Okay, so
could we have a motion to present a resolution encouraging the state legislature to pass H770. I have a motion to approve by Commissioner Kirk. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Judson. Discussion. Commissioner Chena.
Have you spoken with the city council about this?
I've had discussions with individual counselors.
What do they think?
The ones that I've polled are encouraging. I mean, they will. I think that there's some that will support, but obviously we don't know that until they do. And I think an important part of that discussion is us showing, our support for it first, since we've asked the legislature to make these changes for us.
Commissioner Dodson?
My question was similar, just what are our thoughts, I guess, as a board and our ongoing conversations to work collaboratively with the city? And it seems like it is sort of a zero-sum game, right? I mean, the taxpayers pay money, and all of the municipal services, even though we're separate, they all need to be served. And the city's in fiscal constraint situation just like we are. So just wondering, the politics of it and the argument for why that money should necessarily go to the schools more so than other expenses that the city has, I guess.
Commissioner Seguin.
Beyond precedent. We obviously have a precedent for that, but beyond precedent, some objective argument.
So I have some questions just to put out there for all of us to think about. So what this motion does is it asks us essentially to slightly undermine Act 60, in which districts are equalized. So the fact that Burlington has an electric, publicly owned utility offers us this potential for extra funding. But the reality is that other school districts might not have that. And Act 60 was intended to equalize funding across the state. So I would want to know more about the potential impact for this to contribute to the undermining of our broader commitment, not only as a city, but also as a state, to making sure that kids have equitable access to resources. I think another question is what kind of impact this would have at the state level. So if we ask for exceptions, will other cities that have possibilities for such funding also ask for exceptions? And then do we find ourselves then in a process in which we really are undermining what we've achieved, which is that we've achieved in this state equitable funding for students across the state? The other thing I would ask is what the perception would be of Burlington asking for an exception to this in the legislature. I think that Burlington is often seen as a behemoth in Montpelier. And I think that this is, potentially a reputational issue. I know this just from discussions with legislators. We heard this when we met with the legislators and the school board a few months ago, that Burlington is often seen as asking for a lot and not well regarded. So I'm not sure if it's in our interest to support such a motion that might undermine other issues or concerns that we want to bring to the legislature on other issues.
Mr. Ball, I'm going to give you a chance to respond to that.
Oh, thank you. In terms of Act 60, I don't believe the original statute precluded the use of non-tax revenues in Act 60. In Act 68, it certainly did. They tightened up the language. So I'm not sure it was ever even anticipated. With respect to other communities, equity in other communities' needs, there are lots of examples across the state where communities can leverage local resources that aren't available to other communities. Some communities have real estate that they can rent and get revenue from that. There are a number of districts who get federal money. It's essentially pilot money from the U.S. Forest Service, just because those municipalities abut national forest land. And so the argument can be made that Burlington's just leveraging a particular strength that we have here, which is an abundance of untaxed land that's exempt from taxation, and we have a revenue stream locally that isn't on the state, that isn't available through state funding that we can leverage. And in terms of equity for the rest of the state, I'd also add that Burlington actually is a net receiver. So even though we use $56 million worth of education spending in fiscal 15, because of income sensitivity provisions in the law, we ended up having to get a subsidy from the education fund to the tune of $9 million. And because 67% of the education fund is funded through property taxes, that ended up translating to approximately $120,000 in education property taxes that would have to be raised in other communities and provided to Burlington. So in terms of its benefit to the rest of the state, I'm not sure there is one by not allowing Burlington to use local funds to fill part of that deficit or that net contribution hole.
I'm happy to respond, but wait for others.
Anybody else? Commissioner Kleeman.
I'm just curious in terms of my understanding of this. This resolution, it doesn't force the city council to use that funding. It just makes it an opportunity that they could choose to use that for education.
No, this resolution just supports
Well,
a legislative bill to change a law that would then allow us to use money that our city charter has
if
given to us and isn't available to us because of the way the law is currently written.
But the city council doesn't have to use it, or do they? Do they have to then provide pilot funds?
The city charter says that if the law, it says that they have to provide those funds to the Burlington School District.
Okay.
But there's a section 50B of Act 60 that says that those laws override the Burlington City Charter
Okay.
or supersede the Burlington City Charter. So if the law were to change, then we would have access to those funds, but only if the law were to change.
I'm still confused.
Yes.
Okay, I understand that part, but I guess I'm looking at the kind of the political situation and following up on Commissioner Dodson's question about whether other areas of the city need that type of funding too, or is it something that can only be used for education?
The pilot monies right now are being used by the city, all the pilot monies.
For whatever they see fit.
Well, I think they're being used for capital projects that they will eventually be used for capital projects that the city has. They're being used for some of the cash reserves that the city has. And so if their needs are greater than ours and we feel like they should have that money, I mean, that's a decision the board could make. But my feeling is we have capital needs. We have programs that we're cutting. We have personnel we're cutting, and access to those funds would be really useful to us right now.
Understand that. Thank you.
Commissioner Kurt.
I think the question was simpler. If this goes through, does the city charter come back into play and they have to give us some money? I think that's the question you're asking,
they hate
right?
us as a
Right?
quorum.
Is that really what you're asking?
Thanks.
So if this is reversed, this goes through, will the city, because of the charter, have to move those pilot funds back to the school district?
I believe so, yes.
There you go. So
And
just trying to clear it.
Commissioner Clayman's,
Are you all set?
I'm all set. That was it.
Commissioner Stoll.
I just want to clarify, the city charter specifies that we would get half the pilot monies. So in fact, it gets split 50-50, and that's what traditionally has been done. So we don't get them all. But yes, in fact, right. And that would do that. The other thing, I just want to say that I think Commissioner Barlow's responses were very convincing, and it makes a lot of sense. And for me, this motion, I do support this motion, and I think it's because what it does is it brings the state legislation in line with our city charter. And our city charter is what we know that our city wants to happen. It's what our community has said they want to happen. It's what's been in place. And so I think what this does, and I would like to thank Representative Wright for bringing this up, is that it really does bring us back to the point where I think our community wanted us to be. So thank you, Commissioner Barlow, for the work you've done on this, and I'll be supporting this motion.
Anything else? Commissioner Curry.
I support the sentiment behind this motion. I'm just concerned that there's a number of complicated factors associated with it, and I appreciate the research you did. I know you've been working on this for a long time, and you came up with some really concrete examples of other municipalities that have revenue benefiting them directly that's not going to the state before going to the district. So I'm aware that that takes place. I feel a little unprepared to vote on this tonight. I was hoping to have a discussion tonight and learn more, and then be able to ask questions that, could be brought back with information that could be brought back. And that's probably the area where I feel like I need more information, is to understand those other municipalities more. And I also would like to hear what some other legislators think, because I just think there's political dynamics at play that mean, the resolution certainly has merits on its own. I'm just concerned with the, how that actually plays out in Montpelier. And I would like to be able to make a strong case statement for this resolution, and I don't feel prepared to do that because of unanswered questions. I know our attorney has weighed in on this question before. I'd like to go back and ask him what his interpretation was. I know, as as you brought up, there's other municipalities that benefit from other revenues. There's municipalities that use their per pupil to send their kids to private boarding schools that cost like $10,000 more than per pupil spending. I'd like to understand how they do that, how they raise that revenue, because I think that's an equity issue too. So I know that Act 6068 doesn't work the way it was intended to. I know that we don't have equity around the state, and so for that reason, I agree with the sentiment. I agree with the goal here, and I appreciate all the research you did. I just don't feel prepared to vote tonight because I have so many questions. So if this were coming to us next month, I would feel like I would have time to get those questions answered.
Any further questions? So I'll just close out on mine in that.
I just have to.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see you, Commissioner.
No, I'm just mulling over the intergovernmental implications of us passing a resolution regarding city spending without a more formal consultation with the city council, and just wondering how, and I actually don't know very much about the historical relationships between the city council and the school board. Well, my first impression of it was somewhat negative from several years ago, in terms of a kind of tension, and that things seem to be moving in a much more productive direction, although I don't know I've not been involved particularly in that other than being invited to the dinners the past 2 years. So I don't, I don't know if those of you on the board who have more experience connecting with the city council have any thoughts on whether passing this resolution tonight would have any negative impact on our relationship with the city council. And not that that is necessarily the only thing that would determine whether one would support the motion or not, but I feel like I really don't know what the potential implications of a vote yes on this might be.
Any further questions?
I just want to say that I support the motion. I understand where people are coming from about wanting to get more information in the delicate delicate relationship that we have with City Council. It's a time issue also, that if we wait a month, it may not happen.
Okay, thank you. So I do support this motion. I think there's a city charter that already relinquishes the city to give us this money. I haven't seen any movement for them to try to change that right now. So the permission, if you could call it that, is already there, much as the charter already guides us on so many other things. Burlington doesn't have all the opportunities of some of these other communities. We are where we are, and we have dire needs. And just personally, I have no problem fighting for any funds that we can possibly bring in, especially at a time when we have to reverse this to becoming a growth school district rather than one that just constantly sits to say, how many people do I have to cut in order to get below 2%? I think we just, this is just one of probably a number of things that are come in front of us. I don't, those that don't support this, I know you feel strong on that, and I actually commend you for sticking to your guns on this, and that's fine. But I think the city charter already tells us that we can do this. I think the city's used to giving it to us, and it's only due to the state that we're not getting it, for no other reason. There was never a motion by the city to take this money. So, and that's why I'm going to be voting for it. So if it's okay with everybody, we'll go ahead and put it to a vote. We have a motion to support a resolution encouraging the state legislature to pass H770. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. 8. All those against? 3. Motion passes. Thank you. We will now have, I have 2 motions to consider for executive session. I'm sorry, I tried to get this sooner. The first motion is to consider executive session to discuss personnel matters where premature disclosure could place the school district at a substantial disadvantage.
So moved.
I'm going to ask for, let me get a second now. Second, we're not going into executive session yet, though, so we have those motions. The next is to motion to consider executive session to discuss negotiations where premature disclosure could place the school district at a substantial disadvantage. Commissioner Kleeman, Commissioner Kirk. All those in favor of entering into executive session, please say aye. All those against? Let's go downstairs.